So, what if everything you learned in science class about how our solar system formed was wrong? What if that neat, orderly little model we all see in textbooks is actually covering up a super violent, catastrophic past? Let's start the investigation.
We're not going to treat this like some boring lecture. No, we're going to approach this as an investigation. Because when you really look closely at the evidence, you have to ask a pretty wild question. Is our solar system less of a pristine creation and more of a cosmic crime scene?
And look, these aren't just fringe theories, these are actual documented anomalies. You've got Venus spinning backwards, completely the wrong way. Uranus is literally knocked over on its side. And then, right where another planet should be, there's just a field of shattered rock. It's like our solar system is broken. Now, the official story we're all taught is called the accretion model. The idea is that tiny little dust particles in the early solar system just kind of gently bumped into each other, stuck together, and gradually, over millions of years, built up into the planets we have today. It sounds reasonable, nice and tidy.
But there are some huge problems with that story. In the chaotic early solar system, things were flying around at nearly 45,000 miles per hour. At those kinds of speeds, things don't gently clump together, they obliterate each other. And on top of that, astronomers have now found over 400 hot Jupiters. These are massive gas giants orbiting their stars way closer than Mercury orbits our sun. According to the official model, they simply shouldn't exist. They're impossible.
And this isn't just speculation from some random person on the internet. We're talking about Dr. Tom Van Flanderen, a guy with a PhD from Yale who spent 20 years as the chief astronomer for the U.S. Naval Observatory. He was on the inside, and he saw these contradictions with his own eyes. For him, the official story just didn't match the data. The math was wrong. So Van Flanderen revived an older, pretty radical idea: solar fission. The theory goes that our young sun was spinning so incredibly fast that it was becoming unstable. To survive, it literally hurled huge blobs of plasma out from its equator. And those plasma balls, they eventually cooled down and condensed into planets. It's a wild thought, but it brilliantly explains why all the planets are on that one flat orbital plane. They were all spun out from the sun's equator. But Van Flanderen's theory led him right back to a mystery that's more than 200 years old. An investigation that didn't start with giant telescopes, but with simple mathematics, and the very strange case of a planet that just wasn't there. Back in the 1700s, astronomers realized the planets followed this clean mathematical sequence, which we now call the Tetius-Bode law. This formula didn't just match the orbits of all the known planets, it insisted there had to be another one hiding out between Mars and Jupiter. Then, when Uranus was discovered in 1781, it was exactly where the law said it would be. All of a sudden, this prediction had huge credibility. So, naturally, everyone started looking in that gap. And in 1801, they found something right in the predicted orbit. They called it Ceres, but it was tiny. Then they found another little object, and another, and another. Today, we know there are millions of rocks in that orbit. We didn't find a missing planet, we found a debris field. We call it the asteroid belt. This led to a stunning new theory: the exploded planet hypothesis. What if a planet did form there, just like the law predicted, but then something, or maybe even someone, violently destroyed it? Some people even gave this lost world a name, calling it Maldek or Phaeton. And this is where our investigation takes a sharp turn. Because if a planet exploded, its closest neighbors would have to bear the scars. And the evidence trail leads us directly to the most mysterious planet in our solar system, Mars. You see, Van Flanderen realized that if a planet exploded, the debris wouldn't just scatter. He saw these old Soviet anti-satellite tests where the smaller fragments actually started orbiting the larger ones. So he predicted we'd find comets with their own moons, not just dust tails. Scientists pretty much laughed at him. But then, Comet Shoemaker-Levy 9 showed up as a string of 21 fragments right before it smashed into Jupiter. He was right. Suddenly, comets looked less like dirty snowballs and a whole lot more like cosmic shrapnel. Okay, now let's look at Mars itself. It is literally two different worlds fused into one. This is called the Martian dichotomy. The entire northern hemisphere is smooth, low-lying, and looks exactly like a dried-up ocean basin. The southern hemisphere, though, is a battered, cratered wasteland. Its crust is 20 miles thicker and about 2 billion years older. This is just not natural. And what's even more telling is this: the largest volcano in the entire solar system, Olympus Mons, sits on a huge bulge in the Martian crust.
Directly opposite it, on the other side of the planet, is another very similar bulge. That perfect 180-degree alignment, that's the classic signature of tidal locking. It's the kind of thing you see on a moon that's being yanked on by a much, much larger parent planet.
So let's recap the evidence. A destroyed parent planet, a former moon that got blasted into a new orbit, a surface that's been half obliterated. The evidence paints a really violent picture. But our investigation is now leading to a conclusion so shocking, it sounds like it's straight out of science fiction. A plasma physicist named Dr. John Brandenburg was digging through NASA's data from Mars when he found what he calls a smoking gun. He found unusually high concentrations of a very specific, very strange isotope all across the Martian surface, especially in two key spots. That isotope is xenon-129, and the amount found on Mars is 2.5 times higher than anywhere else we've looked in our solar system. And here is the bombshell. On Earth, that specific signature of xenon-129 is pretty much the byproduct of only one thing: nuclear fission, the kind you get from massive nuclear weapons. Brandenburg concluded that the only plausible explanation for such high concentrations was a pair of massive, airburst nuclear explosions in Mars's distant past. And this is where the story gets truly strange. In 1958, that's 18 years before NASA even took the famous Face on Mars picture, the comic book legend Jack Kirby wrote a story. It was about astronauts who find a giant face on Mars. And in his story, an ancient Martian civilization gets wiped out when they use a doomsday weapon to blow up a neighboring planet, the very planet that then becomes the asteroid belt. So, is that just a wild coincidence, or did these researchers stumble onto pieces of a true history that someone tried to tell us about a long time ago? A story that isn't just about the past, but is maybe a warning for our future. Now, to be clear, mainstream science has explanations for all of this. NASA says the face on Mars is just pareidolia. Our brains seeing patterns in rocks. They'll argue the xenon-129 could be from billions of years of cosmic radiation, and they'll point out that the asteroid belt doesn't even have enough mass to equal our moon. But the investigators have their rebuttals. Van Flandern calculated that if a planet exploded, we'd only expect to find about 5% of its mass left in the belt, which is exactly what we see. And Brandenburg argues the xenon isn't spread evenly like you'd expect from radiation. It's concentrated in specific hotspots, totally consistent with explosions. And all of this brings the investigation right back home. Our solar system has 3 planets in the habitable Goldilocks zone. Venus is a dead, toxic inferno. Mars is a dying, irradiated wasteland. And Earth, well, we're the last one standing, living right between 2 planetary graveyards. So it all leaves us with one final, chilling question. If there were structures built on Mars, were they just monuments to a civilization that lost some apocalyptic war? Or were they intended as a message, a warning carved in stone for whoever might come next?